At minus 50 degrees Celsius, fire doesn't save you. It dies before you do. The wind extinguishes it before it can take hold. The fuel is gone in minutes. The flame disappears into the dark, and you are left with nothing but the cold pressing in from every direction. In those conditions, exposed human skin begins to freeze within 4 minutes. Core body temperature can drop fast enough to shut down conscious thought before sunrise. And yet, scattered across the frozen wastelands of the last ice age, small bands of humans were sleeping through nights exactly like that, not surviving by luck, not surviving by accident. Surviving with a consistency that spanned tens of thousands of years, across every frozen continent on Earth. That kind of consistency does not come from luck, it comes from a system. A layered, precise, biological and behavioral system for generating, storing, and protecting heat in conditions where everything around you is designed to take it. In this video, we are going to walk through that system from the ground up, and once you understand how it actually worked, you will never look at your own body the same way again. Here is the first thing most people get wrong about extreme cold. The cold does not attack you, it drains you. Your body is a heat engine running continuously. Every cell in your body is burning fuel and releasing warmth as a byproduct. The problem is not production, the problem is loss. At rest, in still air, a healthy human body loses heat at a rate the metabolism can manage. But the moment wind enters the equation, the math collapses. Wind strips away the thin layer of warm air that forms naturally around your skin and replaces it with fresh cold air in a relentless cycle. At 30 kilometers per hour, heat loss increases by a factor of 25. At that rate, no amount of metabolic effort keeps you alive for long. This is where most humans in history would have died. Not from the temperature alone, but from the wind working against a body that had no way to stop it. Ice Age humans did not solve this problem by producing more heat. That is the part that almost everyone misses. They solved it by controlling how fast the heat left. They managed the gradient between body and environment with a precision that modern thermal engineering has only recently been able to quantify. Control the gradient, and the body handles the rest. Fail to control it, and nothing else matters. Before wind, before cold air, before any other threat, there was the ground. Frozen Earth is one of the most efficient heat conductors in nature. The moment your body makes contact with permafrost, it begins pulling heat from you silently and without pause. You do not feel it as pain, you feel it as a slow drain. And by the time you recognize what is happening, the process is already well advanced. This is where unprepared humans die quietly in their sleep. Ice Age humans built a thermal boundary between their bodies and the earth. Layers of animal hide placed fur side down, dense mats of compressed dry grass, and in certain conditions, compacted snow. That last one is the counterintuitive bomb that most people never expect. Snow feels cold. Snow is cold. But undisturbed, compressed snow contains up to 90% trapped air by volume. And air, when it cannot move, is one of the weakest conductors of heat in the natural world. The same physical property that makes fresh snow crunch and collapse under your feet makes it, in controlled layers, a thermal shield capable of interrupting conductive heat loss from below. What these humans built beneath their bodies each night was not bedding. It was a managed thermal boundary, a controlled interface between their heat and the Earth's demand for it. Without it, they did not struggle. They died before morning. A single layer of fur is not enough, and Ice Age humans knew exactly why. The principle behind fur insulation is simple. Fur traps air close to the skin. That air, warmed by body heat, creates a microclimate that the body can sustain without excessive energy output. As long as that air layer holds, the body loses heat slowly enough to survive. But there are two failure points that destroy it instantly. Movement collapses the trapped air layer by compressing and releasing the garment in a continuous cycle. And moisture, whether from sweat on the inside or precipitation on the outside, replaces that trapped air with water. Water conducts heat away from the body 25 times faster than air. A wet garment in those conditions is not just useless, it accelerates death. Ice Age humans solved this through layered construction. Inner garments managed moisture, pulling sweat away before it could saturate the insulating layer. Outer garments were shaped and fitted tightly at the wrists, neck, and ankles to prevent wind from collapsing the thermal barrier from the outside. The bone needles found at Siberian and Eastern European sites, some as fine as a modern sewing needle, are not primitive tools. They are evidence of tailoring refined over generations to address each specific failure point. The fit was not aesthetic, it was functional. A poorly fitted collar that let wind enter at the neck could collapse the entire garment's insulating capacity within seconds. This was not clothing, this was a thermal system worn on the body, and it was engineered with a precision we are still learning to appreciate. Here is another thing almost no one tells you. Eating the wrong food in extreme cold can kill you faster than not eating at all. Survival in Ice Age conditions required a metabolic shift that modern nutrition science has only recently begun to understand fully. The human body generates heat through a process called thermogenesis, and it operates in two modes. The first is shivering, rapid, involuntary muscle contractions that burn energy and produce heat as a byproduct. It works in the short term, but it is expensive, exhausting, and unsustainable through a long night. The second mode is non-shivering thermogenesis, driven primarily by brown adipose tissue located around the neck, shoulders, and upper spine. Unlike ordinary body fat, brown fat does not store energy passively. It burns energy directly and continuously to generate heat. It is, in the most precise biological sense, a furnace built into the body. Populations with deep ancestral cold exposure show significantly elevated brown fat activity compared to those from warmer climates. This means Ice Age humans were not simply enduring the cold with ordinary biology. Over generations, their thermogenic systems were selected and refined. Their furnaces ran hotter, and they knew, through the past knowledge of survival, exactly what fuel those furnaces required. Fat, not protein, not carbohydrates, fat. And the difference between getting this right and getting it wrong was the difference between surviving the winter and dying in it. Animal fat provides approximately 9 kilocalories per gram, more than double the energy density of protein or carbohydrates. In cold conditions, the body shifts its primary fuel source toward fat, entering a metabolic state similar to what modern science calls ketosis. In ketosis, fat is converted into ketone bodies that fuel the brain and muscles with a steady, stable output that does not spike or crash. This matters for heat generation because thermogenesis requires continuous, sustained energy supply, not short bursts. Fat delivers that, protein does not. And here is the counterintuitive fact that carries lethal weight. If you eat primarily lean meat in extreme cold, your body must process the excess protein through a metabolic pathway that costs energy while generating insufficient heat. The condition is called rabbit starvation, and it is real. People have died from it. They had food, they had calories, but they had the wrong calories, and their heat production failed anyway. Ice Age hunters understood this not from books or studies, but from watching people die. They specifically targeted fat-rich tissues, bone marrow extracted by deliberately fracturing femurs and tibias, organs like liver and kidney that concentrate fat-soluble energy, the subcutaneous fat deposits of large prey. Archaeological sites across the Ice Age world show consistent evidence of this behavior. These humans were not just eating. They were fueling a biological heating system with the specific input it required to function. When core temperature begins to drop, the body makes a decision, and it makes that decision without asking you. Blood vessels in the extremities constrict. Flow to the fingers, toes, ears, and outer skin layers is reduced dramatically. This is vasoconstriction, and it is not a sign that the body is failing. It is the body executing a deliberate triage. By pulling circulation back toward the core, It reduces the amount of heat that flows to areas where it will be lost rapidly to the environment. The brain stays warm, the heart stays warm, the vital organs continue to function. The cost is that the hands and feet become vulnerable. Frostbite is not a system failure. It is the survival system making a calculated trade. Some populations adapted further. Arctic-descended groups demonstrate what researchers call cold-induced vasodilation, a periodic surge of blood flow to the hands, even in extreme cold, temporarily rewarming the fingers before the system withdraws again. This prevents tissue damage while maintaining core protection. It is a refinement, an upgrade written into the biology by thousands of years of selection pressure. The circulatory system of a person with deep Ice Age ancestry was not simply reacting to the cold. It was managing it, making real-time physiological decisions that a modern human without that ancestry is simply not equipped to replicate. Shelter in the Ice Age was not about safety from predators. It was not about privacy or territory. Its sole critical function was thermal, and building it wrong was a death sentence. Whether constructed from mammoth bones covered in stretched hide, carved into natural rock overhangs, or shaped from packed snow, Ice Age shelters shared one functional purpose: eliminate wind and trap body heat. Wind is the primary driver of heat loss at extreme temperatures. Remove it, and every other part of the system immediately becomes more effective. The still air inside a properly sealed enclosure, even with no fire at all, can hold temperatures several degrees above the outside environment, sustained entirely by the heat output of the people inside. Snow structures amplify this to a remarkable degree. The thermal conductivity of packed snow is low enough that the interior of a well-constructed dome can hold near 0 degrees Celsius when outside conditions are at -40 or below. The gap between 0 and -40 is not a comfort margin. In biological terms, it is the difference between a body that can sustain its own warmth and a body that cannot. But these structures were fragile in specific ways. A single breach that allowed wind to penetrate could collapse the thermal advantage within minutes. Moisture accumulating on interior surfaces created cold spots that drained heat from the sleeping group. A structural failure at 3 a.m. in -50-degree wind was not an inconvenience. It was an emergency with a very short window for response. The knowledge of how to build correctly and how to maintain integrity through the night was not optional knowledge. It was survival infrastructure. There is one final layer that almost never gets discussed, and it may have been the most important element in the entire system. A single human body sleeping alone in extreme cold faces a fundamental thermodynamic disadvantage. The ratio of skin surface area to body volume is high. Heat radiates outward from that surface continuously. The larger the exposed surface relative to the mass-generating heat, the faster the overall temperature drops. This is not a weakness specific to humans, it is a physical law, but it has a direct survival implication that Ice Age humans exploited deliberately. When multiple bodies sleep in close physical contact, the thermal math changes. The combined mass generates more heat, but the exposed outer surface does not increase proportionally. Heat loss per individual drops significantly. A group of 4 or 5 adults sleeping pressed together inside a sheltered space creates a combined thermal mass that cools measurably slower than any one of them would alone. This is not speculation. It is geometry. Archaeological evidence from Ice Age living sites consistently shows sleeping arrangements clustered in tight, enclosed spaces, positioned precisely within the range needed for shared body heat to provide meaningful benefit. Sleeping alone in those conditions was not stoic independence. It was a shortcut toward not waking up. The group was not just a social unit, it was a thermal unit. And the system only worked when every element was present and functioning together. Here is what this entire system reveals. Survival at -50 degrees Celsius was never about individual toughness. It was never about willpower or endurance or the strength of any single person. It was a system, And systems have a property that individual techniques do not. They are either complete or they are broken. Remove the insulation from the ground, and the body's heat drains before morning. Remove fat from the diet, and thermogenesis collapses within days. Breach the shelter, and the clothing cannot compensate. Separate the group, and the thermal math no longer works. Every element depended on every other element. That is exactly why surviving those conditions was possible, but only when the knowledge was intact, only when nothing was forgotten. And here is what makes this genuinely difficult to sit with. Most of that system still exists inside you. Your brown fat is still there, waiting to be activated. Your vasoconstriction reflex still fires. Your metabolism still knows how to shift into fat-burning mode when the conditions demand it. The biology was not lost. What was lost is the context that activated it. The knowledge of how to layer it, maintain it, and trust it through a night when the environment is actively working to take your heat and return it to the dark. We didn't lose the system. We built a world that made us forget we ever needed it, and that raises a question worth sitting with longer than feels comfortable. If everything your ancestors needed to survive the Ice Age is still present in your biology, still operational, still waiting, what else about how this body was designed to function have we simply stopped asking about? If that question stays with you, that is exactly what Prehistoric Shadows is built for. We go layer by layer into the systems that shaped human survival, the biology that still carries their memory, and the knowledge that exists beneath the surface of who we are. Subscribe to Prehistoric Shadows, and we will keep going deeper together.